Hi everyone, before I start my presentation, I would like to ask, what is Perth to you? Is it an exciting city, a decent or a boring one? To me, it's a city that is in the process of growing up, but it doesn't quite know who it is or who it wants to be yet, which relates to an identity crisis. This is a period of uncertainty and confusion in which a sense of identity becomes insecure. Today, I'll be presenting about reintroducing Perth's lost culture with the help of architecture. It has been evident that Aboriginal people living in Perth are wrestling with issues of identity, both as a community and as individuals. Host mentioned that historians and anthropologists in the past have studied that this incredibly rich ancient history and culture of Noongar is on the verge of extinction. Why would I call it a lost culture? Let's roll back to 1829 when Europeans first arrived in Western Australia. The process of colonization and assimilation policies had racially classed Noongar people under the legislation, having at least 67 categories about what it was to be an Aboriginal person has deeply affected the entire generation of Noongar families. With all the European and government policies, this identity has unfortunately been suppressed. Another factor why our indigenous culture wasn't expressed well is because people are reluctant to tell stories and bring up conversations of the past. According to Elisa Scarton, they are afraid of getting it wrong and are terrified of the dark side of our history and the guilt associated with it. But think about it. We are losing out by not allowing our incredibly rich and sophisticated indigenous history to speak out. It is time to share it with the world. But how can we differentiate ourselves from other states of Australia? How can we get rid of the title of being the most isolated city in this world? How can we rewrite the story of Perth? Architecture can be both a cultural response and a cultural facilitator that respects past stories and sets the focus for future ones. And today, with the help of architecture, the Noongar community of Perth has evolved and now represents a unique contemporary culture with clear links to traditions and country. There are a few case studies in Perth that have successfully translated and showcased the lost culture, but for now, we will be looking at Yagan Square in Perth and Ngulak Building in Joondalup. Yagan Square, located at Wellington Street, Perth CBD, is named after a prominent Noongar fighter at the time of colonisation in 1833. According to Government Entity Development Western Australia, it was the first Australian capital city public precinct to recognise an Aboriginal person, promoting it as offering a window into Noongar culture. The most symbolic aspect of this place is the digital tower, with 14 beams built on top representing the Noongar language groups. But the most obvious aspect would be the irregular facade made of cotton steel, which weathers with time, developing new surface patterns. It symbolizes the material used at the Australian Indigenous Art Gallery, which gives out a natural rustic finish. The 9-meter-tall statue, Wirin, symbolizes the eternal sacred force of creative power that connects all life of Mother Earth, unity and continuity of spirit. There is also an art piece by Sharon Egan, a Noongar artist, which is made from bulgur plant resin. Noongar people have been using this plant for thousands of years as medicine, food, shelter, and fire. It was a unique opportunity to incorporate Noongar culture in the CBD. The next case study will be the Ngulak Building, which is located at ECU Joondalup. With the building named as the Carnaby Cockatoo in Noongar language, significant to the entire Noongar region, it is the main student service and a central hub on the campus. The exterior facade, perforated gold-coloured aluminium, symbolizes the tessellated chest feathers of the cockatoo. The pattern of the glazed glass is inspired by the feathers of the jingi, a honey eater. The pavement leading into the building has ripples around pylons, reflecting Lake Joondalup. Some meeting rooms have wood panellings that are inspired by the bindi bindi, a double-spotted line blue butterfly. There is also a mural of cockatoos painted in one of the offices. All these were conceived and designed by a group of Nyunga elders, Mr. Jason Barrow, ECU's Cultural Awareness Officer, and lead architect Libby Goosh. The elders were moved by the design that was dedicated to their culture, as they said, from all the negative stories, never did they think they would see their culture being celebrated. This is a palette of strategies summarized from analyzing both the case studies, which could be helpful for young architecture firms. Aspects such as materiality, design imitation of Nyunga's sacred flora and fauna, murals and sculptures with cultural backgrounds can be looked at. It is also useful to consult the Nyunga community and indigenous architects throughout the process. And as architect Philip Grizzly said, it is important for architects to give voice to Nyunga people and to consider their experience. Intersection with indigenous culture is critical as architecture becomes a tool that the community can use to pass on their knowledge through generations of indigenous and non-indigenous Australians, along with visitors to Perth, making the richness of their culture tangible. Thank you.